What's up, everybody? Welcome to Why We Love Horror 3.0, episode 37. We're way up there now. It's almost as old as I am. I'm John Maher, and that's Abby and Aaron Brooks. How you guys doing today?
Pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, so correct me if I'm wrong, at least for the second week in a row, this is a movie where public opinion has been divided clearly on the movie. This is a movie that had a lot of hype. And when I see people either love it or they don't like it. What have you guys seen?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think in the very beginning, when I first heard of this movie and it first premiered at whatever festival it did, I feel like the hype was really, really high for it. And then more people started seeing it and things kind of started getting a little bit more divided. So I think it'll be an interesting conversation with that.
Yeah, and I think all of that equals another pretty successful horror opening then, because the movie, to get the divide and the talk, has to have the success which this movie did do. I mean, $2 million opening for a movie like this is, I can't remember, besides maybe even the first Terrifier didn't open that way. I mean, that was a word of mouth over time, and Terrifier 2 obviously had a huge budget and a lot of so I can't really think of an indie horror movie. I don't mean to automatically compare those two, but they're going to get compared, and rightfully.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Well, in case you haven't figured out what we're talking about, or you didn't click on the thumbnail, we're talking about In a Violent Nature.
Don't get too hung up on reason. They just keep killing.
All right, that's In a Violent Nature. I was hyped for this movie just from the way it was presented. And Chris Nash, I believe, I'm 99% sure this is his feature-length debut. I know he had a short in ABCs of Death 2. He had the final one. He did Z is for Zygote, which was pretty good. Aside from that, all shorts, right? Am I wrong?
No, you're correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. What are your guys' initial thoughts on In a Violent Nature?
So leading up to it, I was really excited for this concept, the whole concept of a slasher movie, but from the perspective of the killer or, the bad guy. I think it's a really interesting idea. And I think for the most part, they nailed it pretty well. There are definitely little critiques that it can definitely have throughout the movie, but long story short, I think that this was a pretty well done, way to tackle that premise.
Aaron?
Yeah, I went into it not knowing a ton about it. Obviously the premise of it, I was worried about a little bit of it just being a gimmick, of it being kind of constricting, of it being horror, hardcore Henry, all of which I didn't really want and wasn't really interested in that much, but I was hopefully it's good. And coming out of it, I really, really liked what I saw. It's kind of grown on me as we've left, but I'm really glad I got to see it in a theater. And this would be a mild spoiler, but I'm glad they go away from the premise at times in the movie. I think the times they choose to shift the perspective isn't cheating or in any way, or like going against the premise, I think it really works towards the premise even more. So
I'll throw this up just to be safe. Like, I think the way it was marketed, not that it was deceiving, but like I think there wasn't a better way to describe this movie than saying it's from the perspective of the killer. We're not talking the cutscenes in Peeping Tom or Maniac from the perspective of the killer. This is more like a third-person shooter. It's Resident Evil 4 is what it is. This is Resident Evil 4. It's not from the perspective of the killer. You're always over the shoulder of man Johnny throughout the movie. And Aaron is right in saying that it is not 100% from the perspective of the killer. We do get scenes that are not from the
especially at the end towards the end of the movie. I mean,
and we'll cover the end of the movie because I think the two main criticisms I've seen of the movie is there's so much walking, A, and B, that ending didn't make sense. And yes, I'm putting that voice on because if you said those things, I personally, John Maher, I'm not speaking for the Brookses, I think you're fucking stupid and just didn't get the movie. Like you obviously have ADHD or some other kind of attention disorder and could not commit yourself to this movie. I'm on record saying that. Come at me in the comments.
Yeah, just to go on that a little bit as well. Like I understand like it's a slower movie. I get it. Your mileage is going to vary with that. If you're not feeling it, it's going to feel a lot longer and like a lot more walking than I think is really there. It's like a 100-minute movie maybe. So either, but also like I do feel like the pacing at times, yes, it does slow down, but like I think if you're editing that down, that hugely takes away from the entire point of what they're trying to make in those scenes. So like for me, I'm a very patient moviegoer as long as the juice is worth the squeeze. And like, if you don't think the juice is worth the squeeze in this movie, like, okay, I guess we just have different tastes because I really do think it really worked. I would have really not liked it as much if you're like, I don't know which scene we want to start with, but we'll wait on that, I guess. But just talking about that overall, like, that's not a problem for me at all. And that sounds like a personal problem.
I'm going to kick it right back to Abby. This movie is 94 minutes. It's an hour and 34 minutes. So Abby, go ahead on what Aaron said.
No, so I think this is a case where I don't think that slow always equals boring. And I think in this case, that's not the case. Yes, I think it's a slow movie, and there are many moments where it is just the killer Johnny walking through the woods or just hiding in the bushes. But I think there was enough of like, I guess you could call it switching perspective to keep it rolling, to keep you knowing what's going on. And it's not even necessarily switching perspective. Like, again, like there's one particular scene where I'm thinking of where like the group of teenagers or whatever, they're all sitting around the campfire and he's like right behind there in the bushes. Like it's his perspective. They just kind of, the camera goes around the fire just so you can hear what everybody's saying and kind of just get an idea of what the story is. And those characters are very much so used to give us the exposition of like what is actually going on. They basically sit around the fire and tell you the guy's whole story, which I think is helpful. I don't think it's a cop-out or anything like that. I think it's really helpful to have those perspectives. My criticism of the movie is not really the amount of walking. I didn't really mind that. I think that was kind of neat to see. I think all of that was really pretty. All of this really good like scenery. You see it in the trailer. There's a really pretty scene of him like walking through the flowers with the sunset. I think that's an amazing scene. My main criticism, I think, is with like the people in this movie. And I guess that might be the point, to show you about how annoying and stupid like some of the characters in these slasher horror movies are. I thought they were all very annoying and I didn't really care about them. I thought they were all kind of dumb, making really stupid decisions. Again, I think that's the point of it all. But that was one of my bigger criticisms, was just the stupid teenagers.
Yeah, I'll go on that because that's another criticism I've seen. Like, oh, the dialogue is so stupid. Sure, whatever. Put this up against any slasher movie. Put these kids up against the fucking Dream Warriors. I tell you, these characters are more developed than those people. Like, it's fine. it's a slasher movie. Like, I don't know what you want. If you want a slasher movie where the characters are developed to the point where like they're friggin' very textured, you get Terrifier 2, and then you criticize Damien Leone for making a 2.5-hour movie. So you cannot win.
Yeah, and I just agree, and I agree, and I think the more you watch this movie, the more you'll get. This movie has a really good like sense of humor without stopping to break the suspense, wink at the camera, and say, "Hey, we're making a joke about Friday the 13th." Like it trusts its audience. Like that's number one, and that's gonna make some mistakes with some people. That's fine, but like at the same point, yeah, the characters, they're cannon fodder. Welcome to a slasher movie. His name's also Johnny, and last name's probably Victor or something, so his initials can be JV. Like, I mean, they're not hiding what they're homaging here. When they show him, he looks like Jason, like his face. And I love the kind of the restraint was showing him. And I'm like, oh, they're not going to show him. They're going to pull one of those. And then they just full on show it. And it's not this like dun, dun, dun. It's just, here he is. He's playing with this truck keychain, like a special boy. And then he smashes it because something triggers him. And all of this starts with like just a great, slasher premise. They take the necklace locket that his father gave him as a boy before his mother died. And, and don't take this because that turns him into this like killing machine type of thing. And, another reason I like that you don't know when it's going to cut and kind of holds on things is like sometimes when it's holding on nothing are like the scariest parts of the movie. Like to me, because like you don't the first kill, for example, number one motherfucker. First of all, number one motherfucker. He's the first one to get killed. Like it's very aware, like throughout without pointing attention to it though. Like, and when after this like kind of classic, like I got a bunch of rifles, I'm coming after you guys killed, it makes him like baggy, like breaks him completely down. It's like a good kill. They don't show it on screen. The first kill. And right away, I'm just like, oh boy, like, are we cutting? This is how we're going to save on the budget here. It's like, we're just not going to show except for whatever this big crazy kill coming up is. The rest are just going to be off screen and noises. But no, like to have the first kill be off screen, I think just shows how confident Chris Nash is with his first movie here, because a lot of people maybe right away are like, oh no, like, at least I don't feel like I'm the only one who had that thought, but
I was a little nervous because at first I was like, okay, they're not going to show the kill, but this is supposed to be the perspective of the killer. So why aren't we seeing it? But I think they do make up for it in the long run with the rest of the kills that are very long and drawn out.
I think even with that kill, really, like it's kind of like the first evidence I have against the criticism where like all he does is walk, because then they do a pretty prolonged scene where he walks past number one motherfucker's dead body, and the practical effects on that dead body are like at the worst A- level practical effects, because he's like hollowed out this guy's skull with his fist, and if you're concentrating on the fact that, oh geez, this fucking gigantic dude is walking, and you can't literally take your gaze and move it 6 inches to the left, you're going to miss out on a ton. And if you're just concentrating on the fact that this dude is walking and you're not listening to the stuff that's going on and concentrating on things he's walking past, you're not the audience for this movie, because it's from his perspective, but the movie is happening around him. And that's what we need to realize.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this movie's awesome. I really do like this movie the more I get around it. And again, I think that just we can go on, I guess, to the next kill. But,
next kill is actually one of the biggest things that I loved about this movie and that nobody is talking about. Is there's a character and he's like getting made fun of, A, because he has a freaking like 80s Walkman, and B, because he's gonna go like leave everybody and go find these girls from the gas station to get laid. And Johnny kills them, but the guy's Walkman is on when he kills him. And Johnny proceeds to drag this guy's dead body through the woods. And every time it cuts back to him, the Walkman's running out of batteries. And the music gets slower and slower and slower. And none of you motherfuckers mentioned how genius that is. But I'll be the first one to say it. Like, that's really, really smart.
Yeah. Paid attention to the details like throughout. It really does. Like, everything adds up. And even, like, it's just, with Johnny, everything is with a purpose too. He's like not just walking the walk. Like we'll get to the car scene where he just so calmly just sticks it in, like it just like he has a violent nature too. It's just his nature to be violent. Like it's very pretentious, but at the same point, it really does. And like well, I'll talk about another kill, but like overall, like these kills all feel like kind of that video on Instagram that's like a nature killing video where it's like you don't want to click on and watch, but you end up watching it. And it's like, a baby fawn getting eaten by a coyote and nature's metal or whatever it is comes up at the end. It feels like that throughout this movie over and over again. And I just love that feeling it gives you.
Abby?
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. I thought that I did like that the kill with the guy going to the bathroom or to find the girls or whatever. I think that one actually isn't talked about enough. And honestly, there's definitely some details that I missed while watching this movie. It makes me want to watch it again just to pick up on all these other little details that I may or may not have missed throughout the entire movie.
I think one of the things that In a Violent Nature does really well, and it happens in every slasher movie, but there's a tipping point in every slasher movie when the protagonists realize they're in a slasher movie, right? There's a moment where they realize like, oh shit, we're getting killed. Now, it doesn't happen probably until after the yoga scene, which we'll talk about later. But even like when the girl before the yoga girl gets killed, they're just like, they're just having a good time. They're on vacation. The girl's swimming in the lake. Johnny is immortal or whatever and can breathe underwater or whatever, or not drown, for lack of a better word. And he just drowns the girl. She has no idea what's coming. And like that is one of the unsung like tropes of a slasher movie. Like the first half of the movie before people realize they're in a slasher movie, I think in this movie is done extremely well.
Yeah, I agree with that because that was another thing that I thought of while watching the beginning of this movie is like, okay, is it just going to be this guy who goes from one person to the next and is just killing people? But then again, we do get to that point where everybody starts realizing, oh, like we're all getting killed. And I think that all was done very well. Another thing, and I guess going back to expectations of the movie, another thing that I don't know why I didn't think this, but leading up to the movie, I didn't realize that they were going to be like, this killer was going to be almost like immortal or like superhuman or whatever. I honestly thought it was just going to be like a regular guy, just like going around like hunting people, basically just without a purpose type of thing. So I think that also my expectations were flipped, where it is this like supernatural or superhuman type of person, just like underwater for like 5 minutes at a time, getting shot and then like getting back up. Like I wasn't expecting that I don't know why I wasn't expecting it. I thought it was going to be just a guy. But I thought that was also cool as well. Like it definitely, it helped me liking the movie more.
Yeah. I mean, that scene's great. Just the camera stays focused on the girls while in the background, he's slowly walking into the water. And then you almost like forget about him if you're not just paying attention to him. If you are paying attention to him, it's also just kind of fascinating. Just, when he decides to pop up because there's no cue or anything to it, and the way everything's framed in this movie, it's just like framed throughout really perfectly as well. Like, and that's so important in a movie like this because everything in the frame is put in the frame where it is for a reason. When he's trying to distract your eye, it's for a reason. When there's just so much purpose to the movie, like throughout. And so that kill's great. And then it gets to the yoga kill scene, which is honestly,
it's the scene.
It's the scene. It's insane. It really is. Definitely didn't gross me out, I'll be honest, just because like it more reminded me of like a Stretch Armstrong doll from when I was a kid. Like it really was like her neck. If it would have broken off, like just snap, like the skin would have just ripped apart. That would have been pretty almost crazier than just being like, whoa, through like, but
it's very flexible.
Before that, when just gut punches her right through the head with that spike or whatever hook thing, like that all was really great. And like, I saw another, if we're bringing up the criticism, since no one here is going to do it legitimately, oh, she should have rolled down that hill. If it were me, I would have rolled down the hill because I would have survived and just been able to swim away.
You said that.
It's almost like, and then I said that, whatever.
I know.
Then I'll just describe because I disagree with myself then, because I don't think that. Yeah, you freeze up sometimes in stressful moments. It's crazy. I know if you had a 6'8" hook man in front of you, you would know what to do in that situation. She did not.
Yeah, I would say out of all the decisions that the characters make across horror movies, there's really only like 2 in this movie where I'm like, what are you doing? Like, whereas other generic horror movies, there's like 10. You know, the only times when I'm like, what are you doing is like, why are you so close to his dead body? 1, and 2, why are you so close to him? Like everybody just gets too close to Johnny. That's the only, and it's very generic. Everyone gets too close to this. That's the only criticism I have of the characters. It's not like they're going into dark basements with a lighter, or like like they're walking outside alone, or they're splitting up. I think if I go on the gamut of like smart to stupid decisions, the characters in this movie are not average stupid. Mm-hmm. They're making mostly good decisions, I would say.
Yeah.
To the point, like when he, after he kills the yoga girl and he goes back to the house and he does that scene you're talking about where he wedges the tree branch in the car to distract people, and then he laps the house, which I'm like, wow, freaking genius.
Yeah.
And it's the fight with those 2 guys. The one guy shoots him, and you think they're going to get away, but then he freaking.
This is my favorite kills of the movie.
Yeah, he does the Friday the 13th, 2009 axe throw, like bullseye, and kills the dude with the gun. It's like
off screen that happens, so you don't know who gets killed.
Yeah,
and then it shifts to like that overhead shot, which was like a very unique shot there. And that one was like another one where it felt so much like watching a nature like kill video, because you're just watching them slowly pick up the cinder block, walk over there, and just like they don't shy away from it. Just completely smashes this guy's head. There's like the slight twitch of the foot also, but it's not like overkill to where the overkill comes later when he beats the hell out of that one dude.
Yeah, like the practical effects of the boulder smash and then the log splitter kills, like it's kind of like borderline, like I don't know how they did it. Yeah, outside of like post-production. Like if it's all post-production, kudos, because it's seamless. Like it looks great. Mm-hmm. So like that's another thing people aren't talking about. Like it looks great. Everything's shot great.
This is crazy. This is a Shudder movie.
Yeah.
Like this is top tier Shudder, like in terms of quality.
Mm-hmm. So like I think if I wanted to move on to like my criticisms, so then like they've killed all the people except for like the main girl, I guess, who receives the locket and her brother. And then they run across the park ranger who we've seen earlier, who he reveals via exposition that he's the person that sealed Johnny up in the first place. Mm-hmm. And then they shoot him again and he falls down. And then they make the mistake of being like 6 inches. You have a shotgun and you're 6 inches from his body. Like just don't let him touch you.
Yeah.
And like that's just the downfall of everybody at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one of the weaker. That was definitely one of the weaker kind of allowments you have to make for it being a slasher movie. I'll concede that one.
Yeah, because then Johnny just like Krav Maga's the gun away from his face, and it's all over. Right. But I think the log splitter kill where he first breaks the ranger's back, and then we get this big drawn out like this guy's gonna die. Like there's no hope for this dude. And it's like a 5 or more minute sequence of him just literally dragging him to the woodshed. And then not like chopping him up with an axe, like starting a gas-powered log splitter machine and dismembering this guy, which is not something we've seen.
No. Yeah, it was just really like unique kills throughout.
I mean, I think this one is honestly probably the most disturbing. I mean, I know everybody's talking about the yoga scene, but honestly, like the guy just like laying there, like basically paralyzed. And it's just so long and drawn out that's just like you're just sitting there like, oh my gosh. Like first he, cuts the log and then he like cuts the guy's hand. And then you think it's gonna go like I thought it was gonna go Terrifier where it's just
cut him in half. I
thought he was gonna do that. But then it's just his head. But still, the whole scene is so long and drawn out, and you just see the guy laying there basically like.
Yeah, I don't know how they did it because clearly the guy who's playing the ranger, he's blinking, he's breathing, and then like there's maybe a split second where Johnny is in front of the log splitter, but there's no like clear amount of time for like production assistants to swap out a body.
Yeah.
And so it's so well done.
Mhm.
And no one, again, is pointing out like how incredibly well done the effects in that sequence are, because you have to believe it's real, you know?
Right. Yeah, agreed. I think that scene particularly, they did a really good job with the effects.
And then the only other stupid thing is, again, you're getting too close, is when it's just the girl and her brother left over. The brother decides to distract Johnny by being 18 inches away from him. Like, how close is he to Johnny? He was like, motherfucker. And Johnny's just like, splat. And it's like, give him he's a big dude. Give him at least 5 feet. Like, don't be right next to him.
Yeah. And
that's the only time I was like, come on.
Yeah, and he beat the shit out of him for like 2 minutes after that. Just over.
Can you really get the shit beat out of you if you're dead?
Right. Again, just another very long, drawn out scene.
It was overkill.
There's a lot of that in this movie. Like, there were definitely moments where I was like, I don't think he needs to be doing all of this, but it works for the movie.
He had a violent nature.
Yeah, exactly.
Which brings us to the finale, which is another thing that people online are just like losing their minds about, where it's like, she runs through the woods for like a day, and then she hurts her ankle, whatever. Who cares? It doesn't matter. And then a woman picks her up, and she's in the car, and this woman gives like this big monologue about like animals and how animals just kill. And like nothing happens. Like she's been safe the entire time. But I believe we all, as people who have seen every slasher movie in existence, know that this is the point in a slasher movie wherein the killer comes back or the savior is in on it. And I think what people are missing out is what Chris Nash did is he played upon the tropes that she shouldn't be safe. So we're all like, oh fuck, what's going to happen? And nothing happens. And therein lies the actual genius of In a Violent Nature.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. It's very left open. I am also very pro getting more. So I would love to see more of this, whether it's a prequel, whether it's a continuation. And if there's no more, it's still for the protagonist. I mean, she's never going to feel safe the rest of her life. She's always going to be wondering, even if he doesn't come, the threat is always going to be there forever. So like, that's like, there's never going to be any peace. And I did like the ambiguity of it. I like the story she told about her brother. I would love to see that scene in the next movie, like, and it leading up to that. Like,
yeah, they've given us all the material for the prequel. Like, if they do a prequel, there's material for 2 prequels if they do it. So I hope that's what they do.
Yeah.
Abby?
Yeah, I was not as big a fan of the end. The more I think about it, the more I'm like okay with it. Like, I don't hate it. Like, I'm not gonna like scream from the rooftops that it's terrible. I get it, and I see what he was trying to do. And in theory, I do kind of like the idea because I mean it did kind of work. Like we were both sitting in the theater like, okay, like when is it gonna be revealed that like she's in on it or like something bad's gonna happen?
She's his mom. Like I was waiting for her to be his mom.
Like it was just like amping up. Like there's like menacing music going on in the background. She's all anxious in the passenger seat. I don't know. I think I just wanted a little bit more in the end. It's just a very like, I guess, happy ending. Like he gets his necklace back. The girl escapes. Everybody's happy, I guess, in the end, which is fine. Again, I think I like the idea of it more than like the execution of it. Because again, this woman that we just meet monologues for like 15 minutes, not really, but like for a really long time. And it's just kind of, I get it, but I don't know if I liked it that much.
I mean, it's so obvious, and I'm not trying to like patronize anybody here or whoever's watching this video, but the last time we saw a middle-aged woman introduced into a movie that late in the movie, we know she was the killer, and her name was Pamela Voorhees. So like that was what they were absolutely playing on, and I'm so glad they subverted it. It's really it's exactly what needed to be done.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah, we'll drop this out. We can move on to what did we actually think of this movie?
So I think I rated it the lowest out of the 3 of us. That doesn't mean that I didn't like the movie. I did really like it. I liked the idea of it all. I liked the perspective. I liked the kills. I didn't like the people in the movie. I didn't like the ending that much. The more I think about the ending, the more I do like and appreciate it. And I think my rating probably could get higher on a rewatch, especially with noticing all these little details that I may have missed the first time. I don't know if I want to see a sequel or a prequel or whatever. I mean, I think it could be cool, but I don't know if I want it. But I give it a 3.5, which is a solid rating.
Just to break it up, I'll go next. I think this is solid. All the criticisms that were levied against it, I appreciate your criticisms and all. Like even like I have to like weather the weight of like people not liking it and like people thinking the characters were acted poorly. And I can see all that. I'm not saying this is like Hereditary level acting. No one's saying that. But I can also appreciate that they have a point. However, it doesn't detract from the fact that Chris Nash and his team had a vision and they executed that vision extremely well. So I'm at a 4 out of 5.
Yeah. Yeah, I like this movie a lot. And I'm liking it more as I get further away. And I usually don't change the rating, but I'll change it for this one. I'm going to bump it up to a 4.5 out of 5. And I don't think there's a 5-star movie for this yet, or 5 videotape movie for this yet for me. But I do think this is absolutely a slasher classic potential. And most slasher classics have multiple sequels, and I think this deserves it. I really do. And I don't think it necessarily has to, be the exact same approach to the prequel. I'd be interested to see what else Chris Nash wants to do. But yeah, I'd like to see this expanded. I have no doubt. And I mean, I think it did really well, and I think it will continue to, as people this will be for certain people and other people will hate it, but I think it's hard not to talk about it. So yeah.
I think we're going to get Of a Violent Nature as the sequel, prequel. Of a Violent Nature would be a great name, copyright.
Or From a Violent Nature.
From a Violent Nature, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. With that being said, every week we always cover what we did on the Why We Love Horror Challenge, and this week is no different. If you want to join in, that is the website. A little late in the year to join in, but we're not going to discriminate. And again, at the end, that is lowercase r, lowercase l, capital W, lowercase d, capital I. This week, week 23, we're in the Anglophile section of our Why We Love Horror Challenge, and this is Watch a Movie that was made in Australia. And we'll start with Aaron, because he finished on.
Yeah. So I go to the 70s at every chance I can. And somehow I missed one of like the biggest movies of the 1970s with regards to art house horror, and Peter Weir's 1975 Picnic at Hanging Rock. Really good movie. Definitely like an ethereal, surreal type of horror. Just about 3 girls and their teacher going missing at an all-girls college in the early 1900s. And it like launched Australian new wave into like the mainstream in the 70s. So obviously I loved it. Peter Weir went on to do things like Witness, Dead Poets Society, never went back to horror, unfortunately. And this is one that it's an art house. It's an elevated horror movie, but it's really like interesting themes about repression, things like that, presented through a 1900s, based on a novel as well. So yeah, really good stuff. Beautiful. Like you can pause any shot in the movie and it's like a piece of art. So yeah, it was great to watch. Really liked it.
I went in the opposite direction. I picked the most, when you think of Australian horror, I picked the most obvious Australian horror movie that you can think of because I hadn't seen it. I watched Wolf Creek and its sequel, but I watched Wolf Creek for the challenge. Mick Taylor, absolute legend. Is the movie like going to blow your mind? No. But is it exactly what you think it is? Yes. So I would settle on it being like, you should definitely watch it. You're not going to put it in your top 10, but Wolf Creek is a kind of like must watch situation, I think. So watch Wolf Creek. Abby?
So I watched a movie. It's a Shudder. I don't know if it's a Shudder original, but it's on Shudder currently. It's called The Furies, and it came out in like 2019, I assume around COVID time, because I don't think that many people saw it. And it was okay. It's the concept is a bunch of girls are kidnapped and they're put in this like open field, whatever, and they're basically being hunted by people in masks. It's very much like the premise kind of reminds me of like Hunger Games battle royale kind of thing, except it's not as good. It ends how you would expect it to. I don't think the people were that interesting. It's an interesting enough watch. I mean, I'd recommend it if you have nothing better to do. But I'd rather watch Wolf Creek.
Fair enough. And that'll do it for this week. If you made it this far in the video, like, comment, subscribe, and share. We do appreciate you stopping by, and I hope the conversation about a violent nature continues. As far as we go this week, Monday is always Versus, Thursdays is always this. Tune in 9 o'clock live across all platforms for horror headlines, and this Friday you're gonna get another double decker of Why We Love Horror trivia. Until then, I am JWMaher. That is Abby and Aaron Brooks, and this has been Why We Love Horror.